Welcome. This is Point Blank here at KMTN News, reading the book Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. Can the Mau Forest Complex be saved? Not because we didn't fall as a nation, but in Mandela's words, greatness is not in falling, but in failing to stand again. Can this country beat the destruction of the Mau? Senator, do you agree?
Absolutely. I believe that in this country, we'd rather be accused of having failed, but never be accused of not having tried. I think it behooves us as a nation, the younger generation, the new crop of leaders who believe in democracy, to be able to come together and think of ways that we can save Kenya for the future generation. We found Kenya a very beautiful place to live in. Very beautiful place. No wonder the British colonial masters would never wanted to leave Kenya, because look at our highlands. So our own activities have destroyed it. So the issue of the Mau Forest Complex is very, very important. And I think if we all divorce politics and think about conservation, we can then be able to go far.
Mheshimiwa, and with no disrespect to the great people of the Mau community,
they're the best.
Yes, the best. A lot of pundits have always looked at the Mau community as passive. And in fact, there are sections of the media that have reported or included you, community, as Ajib, any government in power, that somehow the political potency of the Mau community was not focused. Has the Mau Forest united, given cause? Where are we now in the Mau? Is it a more militant?
Let me put it this way. Right now, the Maasai Nation, which expands all the way from Marsabit, Samburu, coming down to Laikipia, going to Baringo, the El Chamus, Narok, going all the way down to Rombo, and even some in Taita Taveta, are all speaking in one voice. We all know the importance of the Mau Forest Complex. We all know the importance of us being one. In fact, the late William Mulenti Mama played a very critical role in uniting all the Maasais. It is now us, the younger generation, who must follow his footsteps and ensure that we bring everyone together, not because we feel we are more important, but because we know how to live with nature.
So, Senator, moving away from the Mau, on the greater political discourse in the country, is the Mau community going to be divided, one voice? It seems to me that, as you know in the past...
Tony, I'll stop you right there. No way. Now the Maasai speak in one voice, and the only political dispensation which will succeed is one that has the Maasais with them.
Are you saying this point blank?
I can put it this way, point blank. I'll tell you that, because we are all speaking in one voice. We want our brothers Il Chamus from Baringo to be represented. We want every single Kenyan to feel represented. And the only way you can feel represented is by making sure that you have a system that includes everyone. So the political dispensation that will support the unity of the Maasai nation is one which will win. I can guarantee you that.
Now, Mheshimiwa, I would like you to be as candid as possible. People know you as a reasonable man. We're not drawn to pulling the trigger so quickly or shooting from the hip, in the sense that you talk about matters in a way in which people can hear. There has been a breakdown at the national government, with the President Uhuru Kenyatta working on legacy and working on making sure his next 3 years achieve something, among them the conservation of the Mau. Then you have a deputy president who clearly talks in tongues. I support the president, I do this. And he attends meetings after meetings where the president is attacked and abused. How is it tenable for Uhuru to work when his deputy is like the head of the opposition?
Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, the Honorable President of this Republic of Kenya, has got to be decisive. He has got to rule over his deputy. As a leader, you've got to make your decision and say, this is the path that I want to be able to take this nation. The problem we have with this new constitution is that it almost created the presidency as a shared responsibility between the deputy president and the president. We want a system whereby the president is the president and has a vice president.
But what I am saying and I'm looking at is this. Do you agree or don't agree with the allegation that I have made?
I do, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. There's a lot of sycophanting.
Does it,
in fact,
does it concern?
It concerns me, because if you listen to his lieutenants, the deputy president lieutenants, they speak from the same script. In fact, word for word. So really, there's no way
there was a fist fight in a church.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ludicrous.
In Uhuru Kenyatta's stronghold of central Kenya, that a deputy can sponsor through money people to go and fight it out in a Catholic church.
Sycophanting.
So what Kenyatta, you see, why are you so kind to Kenyatta? What are you telling him?
I'm telling Kenyatta it's time for him to be able to maybe he should go back and sleep a little bit and think about his father. His father was decisive. And sometimes I see him like his father. But I think if he really wants to leave a legacy, forget about the Big Four agenda. It's nothing.
Even retired President Moi, there was a time he cut out with Biwott.
Absolutely.
Was it not? I mean, Kibaki, Murungaro and company.
You have to.
So how do you see Ruto's conduct, Mheshimiwa? Is it that point blank is attacking the deputy president, so they say I do? Is this normal conduct?
I think listening to his lieutenant is completely juvenile. I can tell you that. I think the best way for us to do is now to come together as one country, which is ruled by one president, but not two different people.
I need then to come to this central issue because I think it's a matter of cabinet. You are telling me that they have got strong cabinet secretaries like Tobiko. You've got a guy like Matiang'i. This whole idea of even intimidating the cabinet. I mean, there was this situation where cabinet secretaries went to write statements with a plot to assassinate a deputy president. I would like to hear the voice from the Ma. You know, sometimes we've heard on point blank Kieleweke and Tangatanga. So I want an independent, because I want to know, is it me? Is it point blank that's against or is this normal behavior?
You know what? And that's why sometimes I believe and I wish that we had a benevolent dictator in this country. You know, there come times when you stop all those nonsense, you know, and you focus on what is the common good for the people of this country. You know, things like ending corruption, that's one common good for the people of this country. And I'm happy with the step that the government of President Uhuru is taking. Things like conservation, you know, having this cabinet secretary.
I return you to the cabinet because they were attacking Kikuyus, now they're attacking Tobiko.
You know, it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous, and I think we all have to, there's a reason why there is separation of power. You know, we, in terms of the legislators, have got to do our legislative work. You know, the president with his cabinet has got to do his work, and the judiciary has got to do with his work. But the moment you find that there is a sort of like a crossing over, where we in parliament, and I'll fault the president here, because in most cases we are not so independent, you know, and that is what is bringing this problem.
I want to ask this question to you, point blank, because what Tobiko is doing is for the national good. He's acting for Kenya. Last time it was Munya, it was Kobia, it was Musheru. Now it is Tobiko. Is there need for the cabinet to speak with one voice? Because if we don't defend ministers working, how can work be done?
You know, my biggest pet peeve is that when you attack a cabinet secretary, you are directly attacking the president. So my pet peeve is that those people who are going out there do not understand who is in command.
So are you telling the people of your area and the Mau that it is not Tobiko under attack, it's Kenyatta?
It is Uhuru Kenyatta. That's point blank. It is Uhuru Kenyatta who is under attack.
And so what is the strong message to his deputy?
I think,
who is moving these troops?
Let me put it this way. My kind words, maybe not so kind to William Ruto, is that, you know, you should pray to God to give you a time. This time is Uhuru Kenyatta's time. You know, his policies are very clear. Let him run this country the way he wants.
I have to come specifically to this issue and stop you because it's point blank. On the conservation of the Mau, are you going to confirm or disconfirm? Is the deputy president interfering? Is the deputy president the strength behind the resistance?
If you listen to his lieutenants, then of course the conclusion that you will come up with is that he's interfering with it.
What can he do?
What he can do is that he can tell them, shut up. This is what the president wants. This is good for the country. And let's follow
Why
that.
can't the Ma community
Okay.
point blank have a meeting and say we are calling on the deputy who is arrested? He normally comes to the Ma.
You know,
he comes there for many
I'll put it
functions. I've
this
seen him with Governor Olelenku. Why can't
Let
you?
me put it this way, Tony. I'm very happy with the steps the president is taking. And that is why I want to support. Sometimes when we deal so much in negativity, it doesn't help us. At the end of the day, Tobiko is doing a fantastic job. We defend what he's doing.
I'm moving on, but I've asked you a point-blank question. You are evading.
I'm not
Can the
evading.
Ma community call upon the deputy president to publicly support government moves to conserve the Ma?
As an elected member who speaks for the Maasai community, I want to ask the deputy president, if you're interfering it, please stop. The Maasai community have spoken, and they have said, we want conservation, period.
I then have to move you to this issue of women in politics. The Maasai have, over the time, been criticized to be among the communities that have been slower than others to see women empowerment, to the girl child, to education, etc. What improvements are you seeing today in a young leader like you that is advancing women rights, women privileges, women education, opportunities for girl child?
Tony, that's a very good question. Because when I sit here, I've empowered over 25,000 girls, directly paid for their school, including sending so many of them to the US. I believe in a society where the women and men are equal. And I know that during this time, you can't compare it with the time when our forefathers were there. Right now, there are more women in politics. There are more women who can be able to speak for themselves.
I need to go one by one.
Yes.
When you talk about education,
yes,
let's be very specific. Is it increases of classrooms?
No. Directly paying for their school, primary, secondary, and university.
And as a community, is there more community awareness?
Absolutely.
How many percentage would you say of young girls
I would say when I was going to school, when I was in high school, there were very few girls who were in high school who were Maasais. But now, you might even find that there are more girls than boys in high school.
So the community has...
The community is more aware. In fact,
Kenya, yeah.
we deal on a daily basis with harambes or graduation ceremony. It's a big thing, you know, when there's a graduation ceremony.
There are so many people watching you now from the Ma community, and many of those girl children. And one of the reasons I'm asking for you, or these questions point blank, is you inspire this change. So Maasai parents who are at home and have girls who are growing up, what is the message you have for your brothers?
That I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful for the future of the Maasai nation because we have embraced education, and I want to encourage them all to continue doing that because it is time for us now to one day even lead this country. And the only way we can be able to lead this country is when we have a lot of us educated.
I also want to use this forum for you to send another message. Let's talk about FGM. You know this has been something that has, because of your community, been a problem for so long, circumcision of the girl child. At a personal level, I find that something offensive. What is your position?
Tony, the 25,000 girls that I sponsored, I rescued them from forced marriages and forced circumcision. I'm one of the people who do not believe in that. I think we can have an alternative rite of passage without the actual cut. And I want to encourage the government to apply a bicultural approach to ending FGM in Kenya. You cannot come in forcefully and say you are going to examine. I faulted Natembea for that. You know, that the schools will examine girls. That is invading their privacy. You cannot do that. What we need to do is that we need to go step by step and ensure and become alive to the fact that some of these cultural practices are things that we acquired from our forefathers. So the thing is, are they fit for this era? No, they're not.
Yes.
But is the government approach, forceful approach, going to work? It will not work.
You see, my friend, on a lighter note, I've been on the political trail in Maasai land in my other life. And I saw you like declarations. When the Maasai make a big decision, Suswa is where everything is said and done. As a young senator, I hope one day you'll call a meeting Suswa and have a declaration against FGM. That's a challenge. I'm giving you a challenge at point blank.
It's no longer, the reason why we used to use Suswa as much is because we didn't have any other modes of communication. We have radio stations now, which we speak directly to our people. Even headsmen, when they are taking, shepherding, they have radio stations. We can send that message.
So can we have a point-blank
Absolutely.
declaration against FGM?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
say it point-blank, then we move on.
Point-blank, it's about time that we approach this issue of FGM through a bicultural approach and end it completely.
Mheshimiwa, let's talk about equity, because the Maasai have, for a long time, been neglected. As I was growing up, we grew up with these stories of the Maasai in the Kikuyu War, particularly in Kiambu, where we have this phrase that we used to, we were fighting to remove Maasais from the lands. So I don't know what the history is now. How much is there now, equity, resources?
I don't really think we've been neglected. Why are we neglected? I think it's just that we were misunderstood, because people will come in and they'll see how we carry our day-to-day activities, and they draw their own conclusion. I think now what we can say is this. I think the government has got to protect these indigenous communities and protect them in this way. We've got to change laws, because if we, and I know there's a conflict between the willing buyer, willing seller, but we have got to come up with laws, because what we're encouraging our people now is not to sell their land, but to lease their land.
In fact, I was coming to that issue, but go ahead. Yeah.
Because if we sell our land, then where do you live? If you lease that land, at least you can be able to gain an income from that land.
How can government help? I know there is freedom of choice, because somebody comes and cheats and you sell land for cheap.
No. There are two ways.
Yes.
In fact, if we focus on zoning laws, it will solve all our problems. Tony, you cannot come to my agricultural area and then buy 10 acres of land and subdivide it into plots and then bring in a new population there. That should not be allowed. I think we are very clear, and I think the government is also clear. It's just an issue of implementation.
So I want to be, there's a land control board used to exist in the older day, and where families were involved, so that selling wasn't so easy. Is there mechanisms that work?
Tony, don't even mention land control board, because that is the biggest problem we have in our communities, where we even now have women for hire. Or bride for hire, where a man who wants to sell his land will go to town and just hire a woman. She'll go there and say, yes, I've agreed to do that. I think the only way to do that is to approach it from a perspective that even those people who want to hire brides to be able to go and give consent for the land to be sold will not be able to do it. I think, one, we've got to zone areas where indigenous people live. Yes. Number two, we have also to make it very difficult such that you cannot sell land for the indigenous people, because our lifestyle is different. If you go to Narok town today, you will find a woman milking a cow in the middle of the road, because her husband has sold land, she's left with one cow, she doesn't have a place to live. So she continues roaming around with that cow. Wherever the cow feels like it wants to give milk, she milks it there.
Mheshimiwa, there's another worrying thing in Maasai land. I've walked there and seen so many flower farms emerging, rose farms, etc. How is it sustainable for pastoralism to exist because of the usage of water? Are you not destroying the ecosystem?
The biggest problem I have with flower farms is that when they have a source of water, or rather where they get their water from, when the water is being transported to come and fuel these flower farms, everyone who lives along that road is neglected. Nolturech is an example. I've got a piece of land next to the source of the river. And when that water is coming all the way from Kajiado to Kitengela, from Loitoktok to Kitengela, the communities around that area are not given water. I think what we need to do is to balance the need to have these multinational corporations and have all these big companies because it is good for the country GDP, and also the need for having people sustain their way of life.
Now, is pastoralism as a concept sustainable? Have the Maasai not have to look for alternative? We have this problem in this country, like maize being the staple diet. And Kenyans, for example, are sometimes advised to change what we eat in order that we don't have so much dependency on one cash crop. There's a school of thought that feels that in Maasai, not much is being done. For example, even doing more grade cattle for milk, so on, as opposed to just for beef and cattle. Is there a need to rethink? The British talk about British process re-engineering, business process.
Absolutely.
Re-engineering.
Absolutely.
Is there a need to re-engineer the thinking?
Absolutely. And now we can leapfrog, because we don't need to go through the steps that other people have gone through. Right now, we can grow more fodder for our cows. The last census, which were, I think they're still going on, I'm not so sure about that, but they're very important because they'll be able to give us, like me as a leader of Narok County, it will be able to allow me to know how many heads of cattle do we have in Narok County. And with those numbers, we can now be scientific and say we need X amount of acreage of fodder for us to be able to feed our cows so that we can be able to find a way to accommodate this issue of pastoralism. Because the biggest problem we have in Maasai land today is that as a Maasai man, I will sell land and I'll go and buy so many cows, forgetting that I've sold land.
So we can help the nation, Mheshimiwa. Like if you go to the Himalayas or Everest, you find people are employed as tour guides. You find somebody else, and that becomes a mainstay. The Maasai community, things like the Maasai Mara, once you change the Mau forest and ecosystem to tourists to walk, is that, so you train your people to be able to look at something else other than just following. Is that something that it can be created?
Let me tell you, the best tour guides we have in this country today are Maasais. They can name every tree out there. They can name every bird out there. And maybe this might be news for you, Tony, but in the Maasai Mara, we've got a tour guide school that mostly trains a lot of Maasai youth. Of course, we have to do more of that. But earlier on, you had asked about us changing into dairy. Of course, that is where we are. Yes. As I sit here, I'm not only a senator, but I'm also a dairy farmer.
Well, let's talk
and I'm
about
hoping
that
a lot of our Maasai can be able to follow.
Let's talk about your dairy farming. Yes. How does that affect in income? Where do you sell?
The dairy business has been very tough. I can tell you that. And there's a lot of stories about who is controlling the dairy sector in this country. Yeah. But I think the future of this country is really where we have cottage industries, small dairy farms being built to be able to feed that county.
So why I'm asking this, you had Kenya Meat Commission.
Yes.
It was there because of the beef, etc.
Yeah.
Is there some thinking as a Maa community now, if you had your own milk processing, is it a business that somebody should be thinking about?
Absolutely.
Because
the problem, Tony, we have in this country is that people thinking government should do everything. Government should not do everything. Let's allow private sector.
How many cattle do you have?
Well, my dairy cows are 16.
Yes.
Each cow gives me about 40 kilos a day.
Yes.
So, of course, if you do, I'm only milking right now about 5 of them.
Yes.
4 of them.
Yes.
But by the time I milk all the 16,
yes,
I'll be getting probably close to 1,600 liters of milk a day.
Do you live in Nairobi or the county?
I live both in Narok and in Nairobi. Nairobi, it's only a place for me to be able to go to work.
So Kenyans will look at this man, Oledema, and so on. I don't know, is there a future governor here, Olekina?
Tony, let's put it this way. Currently, I'm a senator of Narok County.
Yes.
I want to do my job as a senator of Narok County.
Yes.
But of course, we'll aspire to bigger things, including running for president of this country. But for now, I really want to concentrate on being the senator.
I want to ask you, I often ask this question to guests who come here, because I want Kenyans to support the judiciary. Mumbi Ngugi gave a ruling that if you are in office and you are brought before a court, that you really should vacate the office until your case is heard. Do you support her?
I don't.
And what do you think
I don't support that. And actually, let me put it this way. It wasn't a ruling. That's where people go wrong. It was a suggestion. It wasn't a ruling. It wasn't part of the ruling because it was not a prayer. We've got a problem because we've got state officers and public officers. You cannot treat state officers the same way you treat public officers. One of them is elected, the other one is appointed. Anyone who is appointed, they have to step aside because they are answerable to somebody else. But now, when somebody is elected, it becomes very difficult because you remember there's no taxation without representation. So unless we amend the Constitution and we develop legislation to allow for that in terms of legislation, what we are doing really is not right. I think if you're an elected person by millions of Kenyans or thousands of Kenyans, we should come up with legislation to be able to ensure that even though you're the CEO, there are certain responsibilities that falls under your juniors.
So, Mheshimiwa, mulipiga magoti, mumekubali mambo ya revenue share.
No, not me.
No,
I want to be point I want to be honest with you. I completely do not agree with that.
But it has been done.
Okay? In In the Maasais, we have a saying that says, "Medanyor kimojunobo elashei, kidole kimoja kiui chawa." So it doesn't matter what I say. I completely know that we have a serious problems in terms of revenue in this country. I think there's a big hole in terms of the national government revenue collection, but I don't think punishing counties will solve that. I think we have got to have line item budgets, until the day that the Commission of Revenue Allocation will come and tell us it cost X amount to maintain Narok County, I will never support that. I showed the president where they can get money from. You cannot come in and tell me I'm increasing 100% for the youth fund, or rather NYS, yet there was a huge crisis, corruption scandal there, and I'm refusing to send more money to counties. For me, I am not part of that.
I'm not going to let you go before asking you this question. You're a vocal senator. The Speaker of the Senate, Lusaka, Kenneth, is campaigning for 2022. Is this proper for a speaker who?
First of all, I'm not sure that he's campaigning because I'm not with him. I can tell you this. My call to all leaders currently is that let us focus on building this nation. Time for campaigns will come. 2021 December or January 2022, it will come.
I'll ask you another question. Would you rather see a speaker bring better decorum to the Senate? And this is point blank. You can evade.
Point blank. I'll put it this way. I will not evade it. I think, to be fair to Kenneth Lusaka, he's a very fair gentleman. He is a good leader because he listens and he brings us together. And I think if it wasn't for him, maybe senators would have walked out and they would not have agreed to the division of revenue. Okay? Lucky enough, I was in Mombasa. I sit in the Public Accounts and Investment Committee, and we had sittings in Mombasa. Lucky enough, I was there because I would have been the first one to walk out of the Senate and say, I'm not voting for this. And of course, I will not even vote for it because I don't agree in it. This is a principal issue where I feel like, no, we're doing the wrong thing. I want the legislative arm of government to do its work without any interference. And I'm one of those people, whether you like it or not, Tony, who believe that sometimes the executive interferes with the legislative arm of government.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yeah. And therefore, for you, the speaker was magnanimous. That it was
at the end.
I think at the end,
he was able to bring everyone together and say, gentlemen, we have a crisis. So we either rise up to the occasion, or tomorrow we have a meeting between the president and the governors coming out and saying we've agreed for 316,000.
So to end in a positive note, is there money now going to the counties? Has it started? Or where are we now? You came from Mombasa.
Until we meet, I think which we'll be meeting this week on Friday.
Yes.
To be able to append our signatures, which mine will be missing.
Yes, but there is hope for Kenyans?
There's hope for Kenyans. Money will go to counties, of course, because you see the problem, let me tell you where the problem is, Tony. And this is probably where we need to focus. We have one appropriation act in this country. We need about 10 different appropriation acts.
Mheshimiwa, because Standard Media Group will be reporting this,
yes,
because in the news, I would like to know from you if there has been a compromise in Mombasa. Was there
compromise? Absolutely not.
No. So the revenue bill has yet not been sorted out? No,
it hasn't been sorted out. I think what has happened, and let me make it very clear, what has happened is this. In the Senate, we tried our best, but our best was not good enough. We tried to send more money to counties using the revenues recommended by the Commission of Revenue Allocation. But the reality on the ground is that there's a big hole and there's no money.
So, Mheshimiwa, point blank, there's still yet no resolution. That's just in one.
Well, in a way, I can actually say there's a resolution now because there was a kamkunji,
yes,
which the speaker called, yes, and everyone agreed.
What did they agree?
Okay, they agreed to send the 316 billion to the counties, but amend the law,
yes,
so that we can come up with different appropriations.
So we don't confuse the public. The 316 is going.
316.5 is going to go into the counties. That one is very, very clear. Okay, whether I agree with it or not.
That
is sometimes you win some and you lose some. I've lost this. I live to.
So point blank can report that whether you agree or not, a deal has been done.
A deal has been done.
Well, you're watching Point Blank here at KTN News. He doesn't agree with the revenue sharing bill, but he's a Democrat and says that deal has been done. So he's saying those who don't agree with the conservation of the marine, they must agree whether they agree or not, because he has made a commitment. We plead to the Maa community to follow the Radama point-blank declaration against FGM. Asante sana.
Asante sana. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being on point blank.
Thank you very much.
You are watching KTN.
Point Blank by TG was filmed on location at the Nairobi Serena Hotel.